Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about the impending ultimatum, which is now only hours away. Donald Trump is not backing down on his threat to attack bridges, power stations, and potentially even water desalination facilities in Iran if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. At the same time, Israel has now rejected the 45-day ceasefire proposal, and Iran has refused to accept the conditions being demanded. As a result of all of this, we are now heading towards potential economic Armageddon. Now, before we get into all of that, can I ask anybody that hasn't subscribed yet to please hit that subscribe button? It really does help me with the algorithm and also puts a smile on my face. Today is Tuesday, April the 7th, and this is effectively D-Day in this conflict. This is the deadline that's been set by Donald Trump for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, unconditionally restoring global shipping flows and energy exports. If that does not happen, Trump has warned of what he's calling Demolition Day. And this is not vague rhetoric. This is a very specific and very direct threat. Over the last 24 hours, Donald Trump has escalated his language significantly, making it clear that he is prepared to target Iran's core infrastructure, including bridges — the USA have already taken out one bridge — power generation facilities, and other critical systems that support the economy. And in a Truth Social post, he said, "Every bridge in Iran will be decimated by midnight Eastern time. Every power plant will be out of business, burning, exploding, never to be used again." Now, whether you believe that's posturing or not, the scale of that threat is enormous. We're not talking about targeted military strikes here. We're talking about systematic destruction of a country's infrastructure. And if that happens, Iran's economy would effectively be paralyzed overnight. Alongside this, Israel has now issued direct warnings to Iranian civilians. Reports cited by Reuters indicate that citizens in Iran have been told to avoid rail networks, stay away from train stations, and not to travel on key parts of the transport system. Now, that is a very significant development because rail networks are not just about moving passengers, they are absolutely critical to the movement of goods, fuel, industrial materials, and supply chains within the country. And Iran is a very large country geographically. So when you see warnings like this, it strongly suggests that Israel is preparing to target infrastructure that sits right at the heart of Iran's domestic economy. We're also seeing reports that overnight strikes have already taken place, including attacks on government-linked infrastructure in Iran and potentially petrochemical facilities which are key to Iran's energy sector. Now, that points towards a clear strategy of trying to disrupt Iran's economically from within. But here's where this becomes even more concerning. Iran is currently experiencing a widespread internet blackout, which means that millions of people inside the country may not have seen those warnings from Israel, may not be aware of the risks, and may still be going about their normal daily routines. So you could have people commuting, travelling, or working in areas that are being targeted without any prior warning. And if strikes do take place today, the risk of civilian casualties is extremely high. This is no longer just about geopolitics or economics. This is now a potential humanitarian crisis as well. Now, let's talk about Iran's position, because this is absolutely key to understanding why there is no de-escalation. Iran has rejected the 45-day ceasefire proposal and instead has reportedly put forward its own conditions, which are believed to include sanctions relief, sovereignty guarantees, and control over its own shipping routes. But the most important point here is that Iran is not backing down. And the reason for that is that this isn't just about trade routes or energy flows. This is about regime survival. The leadership in Iran, particularly the structures around the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, understand that the broader objective of the United States and Israel is regime change. In other words, removing the current leadership and replacing it with a more Western-aligned government. And from their perspective, that's an existential threat, because if that happens, they don't just lose power, they could lose everything, including their freedom and potentially even their lives. So when you look at it from that perspective, there is no realistic scenario where Iran simply agrees to these demands, which means we now have a complete geopolitical standoff. On one side, you've got Donald Trump and Israel issuing very direct and escalating threats. On the other side, you have Iran refusing to comply under any circumstances, and that is what makes this situation so dangerous. So let's talk about why this matters for the global economy, because this isn't just about oil. Yes, the Strait of Hormuz handles around 20% of global oil and gas supplies, which is an enormous impact in itself. But it also carries liquefied natural gas, petrochemicals, aluminium exports, fertilizer components such as ammonium nitrate, and even industrial gases like helium that we've talked about in other videos. So when this route is disrupted, it's not just fuel prices that increase. It's the cost of a wide range of industrial inputs that feed into global supply chains. We're already seeing increases in gas prices, metals, and other commodities, and this is not something that resolves itself quickly. If this situation escalates, we could be looking at months of disruption, not days or weeks. Now let's talk specifically about oil and energy prices. Oil is currently trading at around $110 per barrel, just above. But if we see escalation, like is being threatened, those prices will rise very quickly. $120, $140, even $160 per barrel becomes highly realistic. And in an extreme scenario, $200 per barrel is absolutely possible. And when oil prices rise like that, it feeds directly into inflation across the global economy, because oil impacts not just transport, but also manufacturing, agriculture, and energy production. At the same time, natural gas prices are also rising, which increases electricity costs, particularly in Europe, which have moved away from coal-fired power stations to more environmentally friendly gas-powered. And obviously that's the problem, because historically that gas was being provided by Russia. Europe turned its back on Russia after the start of the war in Ukraine, and so has been dependent upon liquefied natural gas coming on ships from places like the Middle East. So businesses face higher operating costs, consumers face higher bills, and economic growth starts to slow. Now let's talk about retaliation, because this is not theoretical, this is already happening. Iran has previously demonstrated its ability to target oil facilities in countries such as Saudi Arabia and disrupt shipping routes in the Gulf. So if Iran's infrastructure is attacked, like Donald Trump is threatening to do so, the response is likely to be immediate and dramatic. We could see strikes on oil and gas facilities across the region, disruption to exports, and escalation involving multiple countries. At that point, this stops becoming just a war in the Middle East and becomes a global energy crisis. And when you bring all of this together, the potential global chain reaction becomes very clear. If this situation escalates in the next 24 hours, we could see stock markets crashing, energy prices surging, inflation spiking, and supply chains under severe pressure. And one of the key points here is that markets do not appear to have fully priced this in yet. Commodity prices are moving, but equity markets are still relatively stable. And if there is a major escalation, that could change very quickly, which is why this could turn into a sudden global economic shock event, what I've described before as a potential Black Wednesday scenario. So the key question now is, what happens next? Does Donald Trump follow through on these threats? Does Israel escalate further? Or does something happen at the last minute to prevent this from spiraling? Because right now, all sides are holding their positions. Nobody is backing down, and that significantly increases the risks of a major escalation. So the overall summary of today's video is that we are now at the deadline set by Donald Trump. It's hours away. Iran has refused to comply. Israel has rejected the ceasefire proposal. Warnings have been issued to civilians. Infrastructure is already being targeted. The Strait of Hormuz remains at risk. Energy and commodity prices are rising, and the global economy is now on the brink of economic Armageddon. So I'll keep you posted on any further news and developments as and when they occur, but hopefully you found today's episode useful, informative, and most importantly, thought-provoking. That's what I'm trying to do, provoke some thoughts. When you see things in the media about Donald Trump saying the deadline is now approaching, you think it'll never happen, Taco Tuesday and all the rest of it, it might happen, and it might happen later today, and if it does, the consequences are going to be huge. If you've liked what I've said today, or maybe you didn't quite like it, but you thought it was interesting, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget, I'm currently running my competition where you can win my property or a cash alternative prize. Scan the QR code on the screen now or click the link in the description below if you'd like to get involved in that. It's another way of funding the channel, helping me keep going, and hopefully it's a bit of fun. I'd also like to thank everyone that's supporting me in other ways. If you've bought me a coffee or sent me YouTube super thanks or signed up as a patron or a member, thank you so much for that support. It really does help to keep me going. As you might be aware, I've recently launched a new channel, Joe and Naz, with one of my best friends. We're making videos that are about food, fun and banter. It's light-hearted, entertaining, and hopefully something that will put a smile on your face. Our latest video has just been released. We've been to one of the best restaurants in the world and it was a really interesting experience. And when I say interesting, you need to watch that video to find out how interesting. I'll give you a teaser. One of the things that we were served was spider crab in its shell. You can see that on the thumbnail, but there's a link to that video at the end of this video. If you could please go and watch it and subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it because we're just starting out on our journey. It's very early days for us on YouTube. We haven't monetized yet, so we need to get 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, which is a lot of watch hours. So if you could watch that video, subscribe, and maybe watch some of the other videos, that would be fantastic. And here's something to put a smile on your face.